In a shocking turn of events, the British media have fully turned on Lando Norris. He was supposed to be the country's next Lewis Hamilton, but after last weekend, the media have decided it's not going to happen. They even went as far to drop a bombshell on him in typical British media fashion. They didn't hold back. But are they right though? Is Lando Norris not the next Hamilton? Is he just a good driver in a fast car, instead of a generational driver? And if you thought that was harsh, even Martin Brundle went in on Norris and his lucky Verstappen claims. After much anticipation and excitement, the British media has determined that Lando Norris's title chances have been crushed by Max Verstappen's performance in the Brazilian Grand Prix. This is how they reacted to Verstappen's 62-point lead with 3 Grands Prix and 1 sprint race remaining. Let's start off with the BBC Sport, who have been propping up Norris throughout the whole season. But over the last few weeks, the BBC has been tracking the distance between Norris and Verstappen by focusing on the average points per race the McLaren driver needs to score in order to become world champion in Abu Dhabi. However, Verstappen's drive to be ranked among the greatest wet weather drives in history has crushed Norris's aspirations, according to BBC Sport. The race summary then admits, Verstappen's 4th world championship never really looked under that much threat. But there can be no doubt now. The British publication Daily Mail likewise believes Norris has little chance of winning the world championship. A flash, and Lando Norris's dream surely died on a wet track as slippery as a chancellor's promise. The article goes on to say that Verstappen is the world's best driver. The Daily Mail goes on to say that Norris just wasn't good enough on the day, dismissing Norris's lucky argument. More pertinently, you cannot start on pole and lose ground to a weapons-grade talent starting 16 places behind. The Times also criticised Norris's performance. They conclude that it was not the driver of a champion in waiting. They also picture Verstappen with one hand on the World Championship trophy, implying that Norris's title hopes almost evaporated. They are also done with the math and have determined that Verstappen can become champion in Las Vegas simply by finishing ahead of the McLaren driver. The Sun newspaper was titled, "Norris Title Hopes Fade." At the aborted start, the publication observed how Verstappen rubbed salt into Norris' wounds by pointing out Norris's blunder of abandoning the grid. Overall, the British media appears to have reached the same conclusion. Norris's title hopes are all but alive. Although not impossible, Verstappen only has to outperform him in the next race. That was only the print media, who are always rating them on their last race. But for the live media on scene to turn on him, that's a whole different level. And even pro-British drivers Martin Brundle turned on him. That's how underwhelming the performance was. Martin Brundle said Lando Norris lacks the killer instinct versus Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship. Especially in a Grand Prix weekend where the McLaren driver appeared poised to cut the gap on the Dutchman in the title race, but the reverse occurred, with Verstappen doing superbly and Norris struggling horribly. Norris thought it was lucky that Verstappen was able to pass during the red flag stoppage, but Brundle, speaking to Sky Sports News, said that if Norris watched the race again, he would alter his mind. I think he will because Max was in a class of one. Those conditions suit his talent level. The McLaren wasn't the fastest car in the rain, which was a bit surprising because they looked so good in qualifying in wet conditions. Brundle continued on by saying that Norris himself was lucky that he did not have to face Verstappen in Q3. Max got unlucky with the red flag in qualifying, but he stayed out on track in the race and expected a safety car or a red flag situation. So he knew what to do, and then he just steamed off and won by 19 seconds at a canter, really. It was a classic drive. Brundle feels that Norris, 24, still has a lot of room for improvement. It's about improving everything at the level he's at. He's had some amazing victories, not least in Zandvoort and Singapore where he just ran off and hid, a little bit like Max in Brazil. But he lacks the experience of challenging for a world championship, and I think that's a whole new set of challenges and rules, and that's what he will learn from this year. So, does Norris have what it takes to win a championship in the very competitive world of Formula One? Sometimes you wonder if he lacks the killer instinct up against Max, who we know can be pretty brutal in combat. But I think Lando will learn a lot from this season, and Max winning 7 of the first 10 races pretty much put him out of reach really, Brundle concluded. With Verstappen potentially being crowned world champion for the 4th time when the season resumes in Vegas later this month, Brundle believes Norris, who has 3 victories in Miami, the Netherlands and Singapore, will benefit greatly from his first experience competing for major honours this season. Although McLaren has had the fastest car for much of the season, Norris has been unable to regularly reduce the gap on Verstappen. Brundle believes it was too much of a challenge for Norris to overtake Verstappen, who started the season with 7 wins in the first 10 races despite Red Bull's fading condition. And he feels Verstappen is very certain to win his 4th consecutive title in the coming weeks, with Norris currently depending on an almost exceptional set of circumstances. Put to him that Norris trailed Verstappen by 84 points at one stage in F1 2024. Brundle said, "If you add all that up together, Lando needed to take a chunk of points out of Max every single race and hope that there was his teammate and a Ferrari or 2, and even a Mercedes or 2, between them. But one turnaround, like in Brazil, and that little escapade was over by and large unless a lot of bizarre things happen now in the final races." The British media have all come to the same conclusion. It wasn't Norris's time yet, even with the fastest car. He keeps on making mistakes on the regular and seems to fumble under the pressure of a full title fight. But not everyone sees it that way. In an attempt to save his driver's image, Andrea Stella has denied that Lando Norris makes too many mistakes, claiming that the team shares some responsibility for his troubles in Brazil's rainy conditions. An unfortunate pit stop, which occurred just before the safety car was deployed for Franco Colapinto's crash, cost him more positions than Verstappen and the 2 Alpines, while a moment at turn 4 saw him passed by George Russell before another at turn 1 allowed Charles Leclerc through. Norris finished 6th, half a minute behind Verstappen, who started 17th and won by 20 seconds. "I made a couple of mistakes, which I didn't have to, and it cost me a couple of positions in the end," Norris told reporters. Sky Deutschland asked McLaren team leader Stella, "Does Norris make too many mistakes?" "No, I don't think that's a fair statement about Lando," he said. "First of all, I would like to acknowledge that Max is now the big favourite for the World Championship. Of course, he was the favourite before, to be honest. He's a fantastic driver, did a fantastic job, and Lando is behind him right now. We are proud of where we are, and Lando should be very proud of his performance. A race like today can happen. It can happen that you have problems here and there. We will learn our lesson from this and get stronger and stronger." Verstappen may be the frontrunner, but Stella is not giving up. "The dream lives on for the season," he insisted. "Overall, we have had a great and rapid development curve. We'll take the lesson with us. If we don't win this year, we'll come back even stronger next year." Stella blames McLaren for Norris's 2 expensive blunders, claiming that both the Briton and Oscar Piastri suffered in the rain. "If I look at Lando himself, the main things to review are to do with his going off track, which cost us positions. But we did struggle with both drivers, including qualifying. We did struggle with locking the tyres," he said to Brazil's media. So, while we talk about drivers, I think we as a team have to acknowledge that we didn't give the drivers easy material today to handle in these difficult conditions. The big question is, will Norris be able to challenge for the title next year? Especially if Red Bull figure out their car. What do you think? And is it fair that the media is turning on him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.